Good afternoon. It's Dialogue Conspiracy. This is program 141. I believe we counted. It'll be 3 years this May. In a couple of weeks we'll have an anniversary. 3 years I've been on the air doing this program. And it's April 22nd, I believe. Yeah, April 22nd. Okay, we'll talk a little bit today about the SLA, probably most of the 45 minutes, as I have a lot of material to keep up on that subject. We had a running commentary on the Watergate from June 17th when the men broke into the Watergate Hotel, Washington, D.C. in 1972, and that took up a great deal of the news on our programs. And, of course, the Patricia Hearst kidnapping is going to escalate into a major continuous news story for many, many years to come. This isn't the end. This is only the beginning. So those of you that listen to Dialogue Conspiracy are getting these shows right from the very beginning of the kidnapping and prior to it with the shooting of Dr. Marcus Foster. And I continually refer to it as the biggest story in terms of power moving in the United States since the assassination of John Kennedy. The powers that be that make the decisions in this government can't run a law and order campaign anymore because the law and order chiefs may spend some time in jail. They're getting a little slap on the wrist at the time, but the big boys still may go to jail or lose their law degrees, and one may be impeached. So, but as far as crime in the streets, you can run a beautiful campaign like Hitler did. And crime in the streets, if you have the military and the army and the police department with you, can go on and on until they get their beloved police state. And that's what the Patricia Hearst kidnapping is about. The SLA is moving south into our area in terms of gossip or rumor. It's natural that it should. California is ripe for these large conspiracies that are planned out of criminal conspiracy section of the Los Angeles Police Department that Agent Louis Tackwood referred to as going up and down the state of California. And Santa Cruz was a natural place for these multiple crimes. It wasn't a coincidence that these massacres took place, these staged massacres of the Frazier, Mullen, and Kemper, of killing the students, the hitchhikers. The campus at Santa Cruz idealistically started out to be a place to study humanities. And humanities is not what a military-industrial establishment needs. And you take these children of the rich or the minorities, and they're out there trying to understand under the redwoods what happened to their world preceding a certain period of history and what's in the future, and you have to come down on this whole class and discredit them, and you do it by staged multiple murders and violences and sweeping these beautiful people off the streets and threatening them with death and making them fearful not only of each other, but the community turned against them. So the internal domestic war we're seeing is moving now from San Francisco to the home of those other massacres in Santa Cruz. And I understand that the FBI is thick in the Santa Cruz hills, allegedly looking for the SLA. And there was a rumor of an escape car, if we find a green car down here in Monterey last week, a getaway car. Don't touch it for fingerprints, and don't disturb it and follow it and turn in information. That gives the law authorities a lot of leeway to come down and move south to involve the whole state. I had another traumatic experience, which is part of this behavior modification, the kind of thing that Bleedy, the author of The Exorcist, is so good at doing for Army intelligence. I went to the store in Mid-Valley in Carmel today, which is a small postal station set inside of a drugstore, and posted up on the wall is a picture of a little child about 7 or 9 years old who's missing from Seattle, Washington. Now, Carmel Valley, the post offices have been asked to post her picture up and down the coast of California. And right away, it makes you think that maybe these children are all in danger. There's danger everywhere. I wonder, what is this child in Seattle posted for? Because there's so many missing at different times that the police have never been able to find right in their own locality when they were actually murdered there. But it is a suggestion that we're into terrorism. It's carrying this thing across the borders, across the states, so that Carmel Valley could have a Seattle child down in our area, and the suggestion that this wide kidnapping will someday be linked to the Hearst kidnapping. It offended me because they know very well that that child is not going to be found in Mid-Valley in Carmel. Last week when we went on the air on Monday, we were talking about a bank robbery. I just came into KLRB when the news on the Monterey Herald said a bank robbery in San Francisco, and several people were shot. And I mentioned on my program, you can be sure that that bank robbery will be linked to the SLA. And I had in mind the British bank robbery. The agent Kenneth Littlejohn has exposed that he was hired by British military intelligence, which is identical to American intelligence. They're really one large body that work together and exchange agents back and forth. Kenneth Littlejohn was hired by British intelligence to rob a bank of $260,000 he took, and the purpose was to make it appear that the Irish were doing it as an excuse for stricter laws and punishment upon the Irish. So I knew that that bank robbery in San Francisco, coming upon all these killings and the Patricia Hearst story, they would find a way to link it to the Hearst kidnapping, but never in my wildest dreams did I believe that we would see the following day a picture of Patricia Hearst holding a gun as if she were a hardened criminal and a bank robber. And that picture, of course, the San Francisco Chronicle-Examiner on Sunday, the magazine news section, had a full-page picture of Patricia Hearst holding a gun, and then a full-page article on the bank robbery. Well, the police in San Francisco have had a series of killings, a rash of them recently, a total of maybe about 60 since the early fall, including Oakland area and Palo Alto up in San Francisco, the Bay Area. So the police are very thick in the area. They have command centers. The FBI have spent in their special troops. The special forces have arrived from Vietnam. Some of them have arrived over there. The military are all over the place. So San Francisco is pretty well covered for looking supposedly for the SLA, and we know that there's a lot of people on the lookout for bank robberies or getaway cars. But 9 members of the SLA, 9, not 1 or 2, visualize this. I mean, that's a motley crowd. A man as noticeable as Donald DeFreeze, whose picture has been posted everywhere the last 8 weeks, Donald DeFreeze and 8 members of the SLA decide that they'll go off and get a little money for food. You know, this is the story. They may need the money for food to keep themselves going. So they just decide it's a nice spring day, they'll go heist a bank. So they go into a neighborhood bank where not one of the 9 has ever been seen before. And they know what time it opens. The bank opens at 10, but at 9:50 they arrive because there's a window that candles them at 9:50. And they know what drawers the money is in, and they photograph beautifully about 1,100 pictures. They're very photogenic. And there's a new thing going on with crime in San Francisco. The people announce who they are. They say, we're the SLA, and a girl says, I'm Tanya Hearst. That happened also in a case where a man was murdered last week, and a woman was assaulted, raped many times, was left to be dead. And supposedly, this is the story, as he's raping her, he's telling her that he's an ex-convict from the Potrero house, which was a home for a halfway house for convicts who get out of prison, that the neighborhoods objected to. The idea of them living in this community, the neighbors are terrorized. So this further increases the fear in the neighborhoods of having ex-convicts out on the streets. So while he's raping her, he's supposed to be identifying himself. This is a new kind of crime. You know what I'm leading to. It's all a bunch of baloney, but it's selling good until somebody really investigates this case. And because the FBI are thick in Santa Cruz today, I hope they're listening to this show, and I hope the police are listening to this show, because you're really pulling a lot of phony things on us, and it's not even funny. It's almost funny, but it's not. So these 9, 4 in the getaway car and 5 of this motley crowd, who are identifiable, pictures have been in the paper, go into this bank and announce who they are, and they don't shoot out the cameras, and nobody presses an alarm or anything like that. And Patricia Hearst has a gun in her left hand, and her right hand is tied down. And then they leave, and it's a week today, and not one of them is found. Now, James Smith, the manager of the bank, these are his quotations. He said, "It was done in such a precision-like manner that they seemed to have a knowledge of the bank. They knew where to go and what to do." Smith was wondering how the bandits knew that the 2 tellers' drawers looted were the only ones open before 10 a.m. when they arrived at 9:50. Now, the women involved, their names were listed: Nancy Ling Perry, Camilla Hall, and Patricia Sulzik. But the newspaper bothers to say Nancy Ling Perry, in quotes, former North Beach topless dancer. Again, they don't tell you she was a Goldwater girl that graduated Whittier College and the English department of UC Berkeley. They want to come down on pornography. They want to come down on the social workers or prison reformers. So the name after Nancy Ling Perry, they give you, she's a topless dancer. They don't tell you she's a Goldwater girl, you see. Then Camilla Hall is described as a one-time social worker. But they don't tell you any connection she could have to a possible intelligence operation. Of course not. And then Patricia, Ms. Moon Salzik, is described in the bank robbery as a prison reform worker. Now, she didn't do any reforms in the California prisons. And because of what Ms. Moon did, the men are feeling more oppressions than ever, and soon all the doors will be closed off to any of us to visit or write if we don't expose this whole SLA for the fraud and the criminal conspiracy it is. So the cover story is a topless dancer, a social worker, and a prison reform worker were robbing a bank to discredit people who actually want to dance topless or be social workers or make prison reforms. Now, the manager went on to say there was increasing speculation yesterday that the bank robbery was staged to provide funds for their latest efforts. Well, I turn it around and say it was perfectly staged for other reasons. Yes, Mr. Bank Manager James Smith, it was staged, but not because they needed the bread to live off. They have enough bread. They're not going out in public, 9 of them. They may go out to the grocery store and kind of get something, but it's really conspicuous to try and pull a bank robbery where they know there's cameras. The newspaper said the bank bandits made a point of mentioning their name. They also said, we're discussing the possibility that it was staged. We are amazed that they didn't shoot out the camera. Perhaps they wanted to be seen and they wanted her to be seen. Well, that's exactly the script. They wanted her to be seen. They wanted the tapes where she called her father a liar to be heard. They want to show America what happens to a girl who meets up with ex-prisoners, and there's a lot of messages in the Patricia Hearst kidnapping that we've talked about on the program before. Now, in the Chronicle this week, there was also an article titled A Door-to-Door FBI Quiz Around the Sunset District. Now, the Sunset District is where they're trying to track down the clues to the SLA after the bank robbery. And the car was left in front of a getaway house. A green station wagon was left parked in front of a pink stucco house. The address was 2330 Lawton Street. And somebody made the comment that the police chief of San Francisco, Donald Scott, formerly lived in that house, and they said, I wonder if they did that on purpose. So I'm asking the question, how close to the bank was the getaway car abandoned? What bank did Police Chief Scott use for his own banking? How long ago did he move from the house? In other words, he may have moved from that house last summer, but he still keeps an account in that bank. In other words, did Police Chief Donald Scott ever bank at the bank that was robbed last Monday? Because it's important to know who knew those drawers, who knew the bank opened early. Somebody was very familiar with that bank, and the person that was familiar with that bank assisted these people. And because a agent of the British intelligence was told how to rob a bank and did it for a